one of the things that we talk about is the semper reformanda. We're always reforming, we're always rethinking, and one of our core values is exploring history. When Os Guinness was on the show, of course, he's like, we don't know history anymore. We don't see the cycles, the pendulum swings back and forth. But our time seems different in that everything is so public of what we're doing, and that's why it seems that you've hit on the theme of embodiment. Why has embodiment and rediscovery of personhood become so important? You've written about that in comment. Why has that become so important today?
Yeah, so many reasons. I think this is all in our mind, even as like the latest news about all these chat bots is like on every newspaper front page. As like, and I'm reading all these higher ed administrators and pedagogical designers are like, oh my goodness, we have to totally change the way we teach. And my first response to the whole chatbot thing, and this is me being naive, and I actually do need to read a lot more, so because we need to engage on this seriously, but as a magazine, but I was like, I feel like this is just an opportunity to like really double down on the sliver, but maybe the big sliver of what human beings will only ever be able to do. And that has implications for how we think about the, slowly dying liberal arts. Like, shouldn't this be the moment for the liberal arts to like come back with a vengeance? There's so I do think just technologically, just as one angle on this, there is somehow, and I think COVID, for all of its sort of tumult, and of course, horrific ways in which it unequally struck so many families and communities, just mortality, death, et cetera. If there was one thing I noticed, I kind of ran this project called Breaking Ground over COVID, where I was trying to just like ask a wide array of people, what is this time revealing about our society, about ourselves? What can we learn from history? And like the common thing I think I got out of that project was people are attending and trying to name what is most human about us. And I do think embodiment and limits and our relational, like finitude, and our sort of relational wiring, were the major takeaways for many, many, many people. I could name more attributes, but so I think, not to get meta, we write about this, like partly I think, there's many reasons why we've written so much about the human being and personhood, and embodiment. I think one is, as a publication that is rooted in what we call these like 2000 years of Christian social thought, and that can be kind of drawn into questions around what is the future of the church, and what somehow it feels like a lot of religion, and maybe this has been this is maybe true as ever since Jesus's time, but feels like a lot of religious talk and focus sometimes like winds up being a distraction away from the needs and beauty and glory of the human person. Like there's sort of, I can't explain, I need to get clear on this in my own head, but sometimes it feels like a lot of theological talk and a lot of like hemming and hawing about the church falls accidentally into this like logic of empire, or around numbers, or sort of American metrics of, like there's so many sort of conversations happening that seem to be ignoring
the tangible realities on being human.
Yes, exactly. Right. That were embodied, I think in the fullest human of all time, namely Christ himself. Right. Yeah. So I just think there is an opening right now, as so many people, as everyone at different levels of consciousness are confronted with ways in which, are confronted with forces that seem to be making us feel more disintegrated, less connected to others, totally unseen. All the ways in which I think we feel increasingly like tempted. Are we just becoming robots? Are we becoming machines? This is an opportunity for those animated by I think a Christian's sort of understanding of the human person to speak and to speak constructively on a range of concrete issues, whether it's end of life and death, whether it's how we understand what the person is from cradle to grave. There's many areas that even touch into policy. To answer your question, which is more how I wanted to answer it right away about embodiment and like our work, I think I just, this is even, it tags back to my wanting to leave more elite media circles and like get into the texture of real human lives. And in some ways leave like the realm of philosophy and into real communities, real human lives. That's partly dispositional. I naturally learn from practitioners and people who are just figuring out creative ways to love and to cover sort of the gaps where the vulnerable are falling through. I've always been drawn to the like nitty gritty practicalities of that in context. And more than like an intellectual seminar. And yet there's something insofar as we're trying to spark new imagination for a more thriving society. I just don't think, especially in an age deluged with content, I just don't think you can be soft before an argument or an imaginative piece or even a story unless you are kind of talking about it or at least experiencing it relationally and ideally around like in a hospitable setting with tables and food. So I've tried to build into the magazine itself, like here we are a little bit, you said, high middle brow intellectually, we like pitch at a certain level. But that ideally these big questions around what does it mean to be human and how is that threatened? And also what are the new opportunities in our day? How do we talk about that in our context, in our particular vocational roles with accountability in relationship and allow conversations to get deeper that sort of create the conditions for tears when necessary, for great laughter, for an aha moment about oneself or about one's neighborhood or about one's workplace. Where in some ways it's just like trying to be the church, I just have come to the conviction that especially in our day, things like persuasion, conversion, transformation, communion, all those beautiful things and experiences don't just, unless you are a gorgeous writer and who's extremely skilled and you're writing a novel, they just usually don't happen by yourself reading words on a page or even beautiful images. They somehow have to be shared and broken open with others.